Salute, my Quickclassics friends. Welcome to this episode of Quickclassics, and I'm your host, Dr. Judd Burton. And today, on this October the 29th, 2021, Friday, we'll be talking about Satyrs, another monster topic for October. As always, if you like the content, please click a like, subscribe, and share. Satyrs. Last time we looked at another monstrosity in Greek mythology, the Minotaur of story of King Minos fame. And today I thought we'd look at another monstrosity from Greek mythology, which actually shows up in many kinds of mythology in the Mediterranean world and the ancient Near Eastern world, and world mythology for that matter. But many people will be familiar with the satyr because of his association with Pan. The imagery is basically the same. You've got the legs of a goat, sometimes the tail of a horse, the torso and head of a man, and then a goat-like goatee and horns on the head. And they Interestingly enough, satyrs also share most of the vices and, let's just say, licentious tendencies that Pan had. Um, they are mischievous characters in Greek mythology. They seek out the desolate places, wildernesses, grottos, forests, springs, those sorts of places. Again, very much like Pan, whom they became conflated with. Um, the proclivity of the satyrs to indulge in their lustly flesh can be seen all throughout Greek mythology, and they're usually depicted almost pornographically, um, just trying to seduce or in some cases rape the nymphs and even human females. So there's definitely a darker side to the satyrs. They were very often associated with the Greek god Dionysus, the god of wine and excess, not surprisingly. And as his companions, they trollop through the wilderness, um, wreaking all kinds of havoc and mischief. Um, they were also, in some passages, they're referred to as Selenoi, uh, um, plural, Selena, singular. Um, and sometimes this shows up as a proper name in some passages. But it's always a reference to these kinds of creatures. Now, there are all kinds of theories about the origins of these kinds of lusty tricksters. The Proto-Indo-Europeanists can sort of track down the archetype to the earliest cluster of Proto-Indo-European language. Um, like I say, satyr-like creatures show up all over the world map in terms of mythology. You can go to the other side of the globe, and in the Americas, North America, there's a Copiella or Cocopelli, who is depicted very similarly, and like the satyrs in Pan, they're depicted with flutes. In some instances, the satyrs in Greek pottery are depicted with a woodwind instrument, a very early woodwind instrument called the aulos. Um, and of course, Pan is famous for his reed pan pipes and is often depicted as such. But getting back to potential relationships and origins to other mythologies, it's very interesting when you start digging into this, that you find that there's like many of the other Greek gods, there's a high probability that the Satyrs originated in the ancient Near East because the gods, of course, as I've said any number of times, the Greeks believed that their gods, a large number of them came from the ancient Near East and the East in general. This has certainly been borne out, I think, in my research on Paneas and looking at the various uh, faces of Pan, if you will, going all the way back to the fallen angel Azazel and titans like Pallas, who was clearly associated with all kinds of goat imagery. But one of the first anchor points to this Eastern thesis can be found right in the Hebrew Bible. The Sherim were the goat demons of the wilderness in Hebrew thought and Hebrew tradition, and they show up in Chronicles, but most notably they show up in Isaiah chapter 34 in the passage with Lilith. Um, And there are, of course, any number of other goat deities in the region. The Amorites worshipped a number of them, Amor and Zaga. Uh, there were regional goat deities like Ods and Uds. That morpheme being very, or phoneme rather, being very similar. You've even got some phonetic similarity with later Mesopotamian deities like Bennu um, in terms of relationship to Pan, not necessarily the satyrs in general, but Pan specifically, in which this demon is a goat-headed, cloven-hooved, snake-tongued demon that had to be placated according to all kinds of rites that the Assyrians recorded. So there are a profusion of goat deities. I suppose you could include Khnum or men in Egyptian mythology as well. In fact, a lot of the Greeks that settled in Egypt associated Khnum and men with Pan. So that is a snapshot of what's going on in terms of the satyr in Greek mythology, and of course, you find it all throughout the Mediterranean. On the Roman side, these were called fauns, but they were essentially the same thing. And again, you find them all throughout European mythology, Germanic, Celtic mythology. Sometimes they show up in later literature, like Midsummer Night's Dream is things like Puck. So there, as I say, there is a snapshot of one of the other Greek monstrosities, the satyr, whose imagery you will be familiar with through the god Pan, no doubt. All right, that's all for now. Everybody have a good weekend, and we'll be talking to you soon.